Well, we've got more on this now from Philip Ingram, who is a former senior intelligence and security officer. He joins me on the line now. Mr. Ingram, thanks for your time this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. We've got a sort of two-tail scenario here, haven't we? Because on the one hand, there's all this rhetoric about stamping out extremism online, and on the other hand, this manual was published online and anyone could access it. How do we square those two things?
Well, it's very difficult, and these manuals have been published online for some time. You know, the tragedy that we saw in Barcelona, the Inspire magazine in 2010 had an article in it entitled "The Ultimate Mowing Machine," and it was talking about using trucks and vehicles as terror weapons. This is not new, and the authorities know about it. And every time they find somewhere where it is published online, it is taken down as quickly as possible. And there are places for the public to report material that they find online, so it can be taken down.
Is Theresa May right to say that the battlefield essentially is now the internet?
Part of the battlefield is definitely the internet, and I think it's going to get worse as we see a greater squeeze on the physical caliphate in Iraq and Syria. We're going to see certainly so-called ISIS, and we're already seeing Al-Qaeda moving into a virtual caliphate environment, and there's an awful lot of material out there. They've got some fantastic training manuals that would hold up to any professional standards. The horrific thing about them is they're training people in terror. Many of them are available in closed groups only, that they invite those that are going to go out and carry out terrorist acts to come and see and to follow the training that they've got in there. And then that's the difficult material to take down.
There's another sort of trend, if you like, though, isn't there? We've got appalling figures that show that 250,000 Google searches a month include Islamist material. So there's that core of people who can only access material if they're invited. Then there's another whole load of people who can just seek it out online. Whose responsibility is this? Technology giants or the government? Who are we holding to account?
I think it's both. I think the technology giants have to stop the ability for people to search for this material. There's no reason why they should be able to get it. And people need to realise that, certainly in the UK, if they access this material, they're potentially breaking the Terrorism Act. Certainly if they disseminate it, if they pass it on to their friends or show it to anyone else, they're definitely contravening the Terrorism Act, and they will be found and could be prosecuted. That's causing real difficulties. But the government also has to make sure that the policies are in place in a practical way to deal with this. Calling for the end of encryption is a good soundbite, but it doesn't actually stop this material going in. And there are other methods that the government needs to use to try and penetrate these closed groups that are disseminating the material to the more hardline supporters. And it's these hardliners that are carrying out these atrocities.
Do the police have enough resources, do you think, to monitor potential terrorists?
Well, it's a combination of the police and the security services that are responsible for it. Whilst the mainstream policing has lost a large number of police over the past few years, the counter-terrorism policing and the security services have had a lot of investment. But that investment isn't necessarily keeping up with the threat that's out there. You know, they've got 23,000 people on the radar, trying to monitor those 23,000 people, what their behaviour is, and all of those that are not on the radar already is increasingly difficult.
What about this specific information about trains and Al-Qaeda? You mentioned that a couple of years ago the information online was that cars and vehicles were a deadly weapon. That has come to pass. Are trains going to be the next target?
They're always looking for different targets, and each of the different Inspire magazines tends to have a different theme as they put it out there. Trains just happen to be the theme this time. They're trying to inspire people to go for any crowded environment, whether it be a sports stadium, whether it be, as happened in Barcelona, a tourist area, whether, as we saw in Nice, a beach area. They're just trying to cause those people that want to follow their doctrine to go out and carry out these sorts of atrocities.
And what specifically about the attack in Barcelona? Could anything have been done to prevent it? Was there some kind of security lapse that allowed it to happen, do you think?
It's very difficult. It's very easy with 2020 hindsight to suggest that there's been some fault. We've missed a piece of information. This was reported beforehand. But what we're asking the security services to do is to have 2020 foresight. And if we look at the track record of the Spanish intelligence and security services. The last major attack was in 2004. They've been very, very successful and have stopped a large number of them. I'm sure whenever they drill into the details of what actually happened in Barcelona, they'll identify some areas where they might be able to improve their procedures, but it's very, very difficult. It's virtually impossible to stop people who are using household goods. A car, a van is a household good, or knives, as we saw in Turku and Finland, are household goods. It's very difficult to stop people who just decide to go out and do something on the spur of the moment, or in a small group that seems to have been planned in Barcelona.
All right, Philip, Ingram, very interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much.